Southgate from Southgate Media Group, and you are listening to Too Much Scrolling. I will see you in the future. Welcome to Too Much Scrolling for Tuesday, October 10th, 2017. I'm Steve Fodor.
I'm Hessenflow.
And we're just a couple of guys standing around at the Blue Box Cafe in Elgin, talking about things that are important to us. Hopefully they're important to you. And if you need more information, there's so many great ways to find more information. A podcast marathon is a great way to find more information.
It is a great way to find more information, and this is being recorded live, so if you are with us on the 7th of October,
yes,
you can watch along with us. If you're listening,
it's too late.
No, I'm going to paint the picture for you. Steve is dressed as the clown from It.
Okay.
He's been handing out red balloons all morning.
Yes.
I, of course, am dressed, as I usually do for Halloween, as Michael Phelps.
No Wonder Woman this year.
No, I'm wearing a Speedo. It's about 2 sizes too small. I've shaved my body down. We're ready to get started on this marathon. What do you think, Steve?
I think this is a great place to be. Come on down to Elgin, Illinois, the Blue Box Cafe. Chris Mao, the owner here, has put together this wonderful Doctor Who themed coffee shop. Some great coffee.
People come from all over the world to this location
because they hear about the great thing that is the food and the coffee at the Blue Box Cafe. Chris Mao is just doing magic.
Somehow I think it's the Doctor Who thing. But
you like the Doctor Who thing.
I could be wrong.
Well, you know how much you love Doctor Who.
Exactly.
You have no idea what Doctor Who is, but that's okay. I know enough Doctor Who for the two of us. Brings us to our Film at 11, our movie of the week. You have gotten a chance to get out to the movie theater somehow in the last 2 days, and you got to see Blade Runner 2049, the sequel to Blade Runner from 1982.
First of all, I want to thank the movie studios for allowing these films to not be released at midnight.
Yes.
They get released at 7 o'clock.
Isn't that amazing?
On Thursday.
Isn't that amazing? Thursday night at 7 o'clock counts as Friday for their box office.
It's perfectly fine with me.
Yeah.
I'm a kind of an early sleep guy. I got to go see this, and all I can say is Ryan Gosling.
Yeah.
I saw La La Land last week. We reviewed that. And then I get to see this movie this week, picking acting roles to choose, and he's getting quality stuff right now.
All right, so start with your rating. Where do you put this on your 100-point scale?
This is probably a 70, 80.
Okay.
Probably around 80.
Okay, IMDb says about a 90, and Rotten Tomatoes gives a 98 on their scale.
I don't disagree. I think this is a very good film. So often we get popcorn films. So anytime we watch a Star Wars film or a Marvel film, we really are looking at the summer blockbusters. They're very nice to look at visually. There's a story that kind of moves on from one place to place. But certainly there's not a depth that you're seeing there. And I think that what we hit here is a story that is kind of a deep story.
Very philosophical story about who we are, about what it means to be human.
It's a movie that is designed for grown-ups to go and contemplate. Everything is not spoon-fed to you. You're going to have to think about what's going on there. And a lot of the story is, do these androids? And that's what they really have rights. And that's a real big part of this, is they're thinking.
It's a big question.
And they can act like humans. Just like the original Blade Runner, and I was trying to watch the original Blade Runner to prepare for this.
Yeah.
Somehow I've misplaced my DVD copy.
I found one on the internet. I was able to watch a good portion of it to prepare for our conversation.
Well, we have Vangelis was the music for the original Blade Runner, and it just created sort of this dreamy mood. You've got this San Francisco that's rainy, there's all these Asian influences going on in there. It's crowded, it's dirty, and that's because it's after a war.
After the last World War, World War terminus.
And what we end up having is this, humans are exiting the Earth. And what they did was they designed these androids. Let's get to that in a few minutes. My point is that this world that was created from Blade Runner, the original, I was very concerned it was not going to be preserved for this one. So we had Vangelis as the music, and it had this dreamy sound to it throughout the movie. This movie had Hans Zimmer and someone else do the music. It certainly wasn't as pronounced as it was in the original film.
Okay, so the music in the first one was pretty amazing.
Yes, I mean, it gave this otherworldly feel.
Music does that.
Now,
it gives us something beyond what the words are saying.
And there's echoes of it, but it certainly isn't as pronounced in this film.
Okay.
I can't go too much into the story because I don't want to spoil it for everyone, because I do think this is going to be a film that potentially has legs. If you are a science fiction person, or you're willing to accept science fiction, going to see it, this really is a grown-up film. We don't get that many films that allow you to kind of think a little bit about what they're trying to say there.
Where we are with science right now, all of the AI that we are building right now, we have some big questions that we need to answer before the AI becomes creatures that are walking the earth.
Okay, we're going to explore this in a few more minutes because we have a book of the week that will probably touch this. There we go. There's
your
foreshadowing.
cliffhanger. There's your stay tuned, folks, because we're going to get back to the conversation about this.
What's opening this week, Mr. Steve?
This week we have a new film called Marshall. This is the story of young Thurgood Marshall and all of the amazing things that he did for the civil rights movement.
Now, this stars Black Panther.
Yes.
So this is going to be a really good film.
The trailer really makes this look like it's going to be a great film. I think there's some really good story behind the life of Thurgood Marshall. I think what he was able to accomplish is stunning.
This looks like a really, really good film. This is the same gentleman who starred as James Brown earlier this year, and he's also starred as Hank Aaron. So this is his trifecta.
He's a trifecta right there.
This should be really good.
I look forward to that one.
But Steve, we probably have our Oscar-winning film as our next film, probably the greatest film potentially of the year, maybe all time.
You might be overselling this a little bit.
I don't know how I could.
The trailer certainly looks like this is going to be a good film. I don't disagree with you, but I think you might be overselling Professor Marston and the Wonder Women. This is the story of William Marston, who invented Wonder Woman and the polygraph machine.
Sure.
He was quite a character.
That's not why he's a legend still.
He was quite a character that had quite a social life outside of his
He was a married man who did what, Steve?
He was polyamorous.
He convinced his wife what, Steve?
He had at least 2 women in his life whom he loved very much. They lived together in a home and raised children together.
Steve, he's a legend. He's a legend, Steve.
Yes.
How could he do this?
Well,
we'll have to go watch the movie and find out.
Well,
I'm going to have to take my wife.
We can get into the American idea of how a man and a woman, when they love each other very much, can make children. But in the European style, having people in your life other than your wife and your husband is kind of an okay thing.
Steve, this looks like a great film.
This
could be
European.
Possibly the most important film of the last 100 years.
I think you might be overselling this, but it really does look like a good film. The biography of William Marston, which is The Secret History of Wonder Woman, is a great book, getting into who this guy was. He was quite a character.
All right, so Halloween's coming up, Steve. Are there any fun movies coming up?
Oh, boy. Do you like Psycho?
I do like Psycho.
Psycho
let's just say I enjoy watching it.
That is a brilliant piece of filmmaking, and there is a new there's a new documentary about Psycho called 7852. It is the story of that very, very cinematic murder scene.
Well, the scene in the shower is iconic. And in
Iconic.
fact, is probably as shocking as anything would be before that time.
Without actually being graphic.
And then you also have that spiraling exit from that. And so, once again, Hitchcock shows that he is an incredibly gifted filmmaker.
Yes.
And also, for something that seems relatively tame today,
Yeah.
it was shocking at the time.
Because it implies something. Instead of actually going out and showing us a murder, it implies it. And boy, did he masterfully... The music, absolutely. That music is so much a part of the emotion of that scene.
All right, so Netflix has something coming up. What do they have?
This is called The Babysitter. You know, when you were a teenage boy or a preteen boy and you had a babysitter come over for the night, your parents go out for the night, you had funny feelings about your babysitter every once in a while. And you thought that there was some story other than the story that you were seeing. Maybe that babysitter had people over after you went to sleep. Maybe they did naughty things. This is the movie that explores that idea of these teenage kids coming together and doing naughty things and then murdering several people.
Well, there you go. It's called The Babysitter. It's on Netflix. It opens Friday. We've got a animation movie coming up.
Yeah, your family pick of the week, Gnome Alone.
This looks awful, Steve. This looks awful.
Kevin! Gnome Alone. You know, there are so many different family films.
Sure.
This is one of those films for the younger audience. They can get their scare. It's Halloween time. They're going to want to be scared.
I'm glad my kids have no interest in seeing this. They're teenagers.
Yeah,
Steve.
my kids are teenagers too.
If you've got young people, I'm sure that this will be
is-
fine.
This is the young people's scary movie of the week.
All right, so there's a whole bunch of other movies coming out. Breathe, American Satan, Terror 66,
Yeah.
along with a couple of other things.
Must be October.
It's all the good stuff.
Brings us to our book of the week, and we try real hard to be topical and on top of things. And so you went to go see Blade Runner, and let's talk about the original, the book that was the book that inspired, at least slightly, the
Yeah, we'll
original
learn that in a
Blade
moment.
Runner from 1982. This is Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? And this was written by Philip K. Dick in 1968.
All right, so I got to read this. I haven't finished my Shakespeare course, Steve. Eventually, I'll finish it.
Then we can talk Shakespeare.
That was what we had on topic this week. I just said, I just
We can't
watched
talk
Blade
Shakespeare.
Runner.
We got to talk Philip K. Dick.
That's right. I watched Blade Runner. I said, I probably should go and read this. This is a classic.
It really is.
All right, so this came out in 1968. It deals with the world. First of all, let's go ahead and you found some information about the movie when compared to this book that kind of tells us a little bit about Ridley Scott.
Yeah, there's Ridley Scott, the director of the 1982 Blade Runner, started reading this book before he made that movie. He got to page 32 before he gave up on it. That tells you a little bit something about Ridley Scott, first of all, and it tells you a little bit something about this kind of science fiction.
Well, this sounds a lot like The Shining, with where Stephen King's book and The Shining, the movie,
Very
with
different.
Kubrick are
It
totally. I
reminds
shouldn't say
me-
totally different. They're just different.
It's very similar. What it reminds me of is The Jungle Book. When Walt Disney decided he was going to make Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book, he went to his writers and said, "Have you read The Jungle Book?" They said, "No." He said, "Good. Don't." He actually said, "Do not read this book. I want to make a movie. I don't want it to be exactly like the book." Blade Runner is a really good movie
It is a very good movie.
based loosely on this really good science fiction. But Philip K. Dick's science fiction is very dense. There's a lot to his storytelling.
There is a lot. In fact, the chapters kind of pop back and forth between two or three things. I didn't find it incredibly difficult to follow
Right.
because of how it did, and because of how it kind of lays out. And I learned a lot that I did not pick up from the movie.
Because
Yeah.
there's a lot more in the book. There's almost always more in the book.
But the elements of it were interesting enough. I thought they were replicated pretty well.
Replicated. I got it. I got it.
All right, so this takes place in 2021. Steve, that's only a few years away.
Well, that's the second edition changed to 2021. It was originally 1992 when he wrote it in 1968.
Well, my version said 2021,
Yeah.
Steve.
Yeah, they can change that whenever they want.
Oh, they can. So
Except for 2001: A Space Odyssey, that's already passed.
So it's a future. And
Yes.
so what we learned a little bit about that is that there was a war.
Yeah.
And much of the Earth is, you cannot live in it anymore.
After war, you don't want to be here. There's so much dust that happens as a result of this war that people are leaving the Earth.
Well, in fact, that's the whole point of making the androids. The androids could go ahead. Every human was assigned an android. That person is your a person to work for you.
Right.
It's really what it was.
You're Wall-E, cleaning up the Earth.
Well, exactly. Except for they looked human.
Right.
And they had a lot of the same human skills and things like that. And I did find out in this they only can live 4 years.
Yes, that is part of the programming that they put into these androids so that maybe they won't become dangerous in those first 4 years.
Well, I'm also thinking that the parts, because they're so complicated inside, they wear out. That was one of the things in the book that they talked about is how they wore out.
Okay.
So I don't know if making a human android based on this technology was so taxing on the robot that's what would end up happening. Or the android, excuse me.
My Android phone is probably only going to survive 4 years. If it survives 4 years, I would be surprised because the parts are going to wear out.
What we also learned is almost all plant life and animals have died.
Yeah.
And so that becomes a big part of this. If you are a person, you could have if you could get a replicated cat, which are very common, by the way, or replicated bunny,
Right.
Another common thing. But
Then we get into the owl. The whole question of the owl. Is the owl real or is the owl a replicant?
Well, we end up having, Drecker ends up having a sheep that we find out is a replicant.
Right.
And part of this, eventually he ends up buying a goat, but that is a real goat. Mm-hmm. And I can't give away. The goat, this is an old book. But anyway, the goat ends up dying.
Poor dead goat.
Poor dead goat. Anyway, and that was part of what he did with the money he was using as he was hunting down these androids.
Right.
Which I still don't get this. Maybe I missed it, but they only live 4 years. Why do I have bounty hunters running around
Trying to destroy them in that 4 years. Maybe they could do a lot of damage in that 4 years.
Maybe. But anyway, I enjoyed this. I did see echoes of the movie in this book. So for Ridley Scott to say I didn't read very much of it, when we got the chicken head, the stuttering guy.
Right.
We got him. He was a very lonely guy. Basically just taking these androids in, when I say trying to protect them, really I think he was just looking for people to be able to talk to.
Okay.
There's a religious element you said that you found in doing your research for this podcast. Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, the idea of do androids need religion? This all comes back to Battlestar Galactica, doesn't it? The idea.
This is very much Battlestar Galactica. Battlestar Galactica and this, look at it from two different aspects. Just a good book. But definitely Ronald C. Moore really explored this a lot in his Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, the idea that if these are humanoid androids, if they are
Sure.
so much like us, what is the mirror to us that this science fiction author can hold up? And religion is one of those things.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of empathy is looked at very carefully in this book. The idea that we need to take care of one another. The idea of we can find a way to feel emotion for other people.
Well,
is
in
explored.
fact, that was the downfall of the androids, and part of the test when Drecker would go and he would meet with an android.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm going to bring 2049 and this book together. So the movie that was just released
Right.
and this book, both of them have lovemaking scenes in them.
Okay.
And both of them are taken from a very different angle. The one with 2049, I don't want to give too much away, but you have an AI that is not really a person,
Okay.
but is there. It
It's a physical manifestation.
correct. And a lot of it creates illusion. It creates the feeling of normalcy. And as you upgrade, it gets more and more caring or empathetic or
Right.
whatever it is. So that is it's a wonderful scene that ultimately becomes part of the 2049. This one, director makes love to Rachel,
Okay.
who is the android. And the entire time of that, she's apologizing. She goes, "I'm an android. If you don't think too much, but if you think about it, you're not going to enjoy yourself." And anyway, this was all part of that book. And anyway, it's just kind of a fascinating way of looking at it. But tell me about the animals with the religion part of it.
Right. The animals are part of that empathy. As humans, we have animals. We care for them. We assign them roles in our lives. And when the animals are mostly all destroyed in this war, they make other animals. They make these robotic animals to supplant that.
Sure.
And we use animals to study empathy. People who care for animals can be caring for humans as well.
All right, so I'm going to leave this book. I'll go ahead and say I recommend this book. This book is a good book. It certainly is not an incredibly long read. You could read it over a weekend.
Okay.
And there is a depth to it, and I think that you will find that you are getting into the Blade Runner sort of universe when you get this.
That's one thing that some people have been saying about the new Blade Runner is, boy, they could make a show in this universe, that this universe is a good universe to explore more of.
I didn't mention this as we were reviewing 2049, but it's already, through the drops in this movie, it's been set up as a series.
Excellent.
So if we want to, and in fact, the series, imagine this, probably is going to go very much Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
It's going to be the androids fighting for their rights.
We love Battlestar Galactica.
Which, I mean, that's the Planet of the Apes. I mean, think
It is
about
also Planet of the Apes. That's absolutely right. Philip K. Dick is one of the best science fiction writers, in my opinion. He's probably number 4 on the list. You've got the ABCs of sci-fi, Isaac Asimov, Ray Bradbury, Arthur C. Clarke, and I think Philip K. Dick comes in at number 4 on sci-fi. This is some deep, real science fiction, not pop culture, Star Wars, Star Trek science fiction. Brings us to our scroll with it. We've got so much news out there. Let's talk about almost none of it. Puerto Rico is suffering right now.
Yeah, they're devastated.
There is the theory is that they will not get power back to the entire island for a full 12 months. It might be a full year before they get electrical power back to the entire island.
I would suspect that a lot of people will leave Puerto Rico. And you basically come to the United States and live here.
Because they're United States citizens.
But they're going to have to rebuild.
Yeah.
And so that means infrastructure. And as in Africa, if we were going to build infrastructure, we may not build the type of infrastructure we have here in Chicago.
We might just forget about the history of the infrastructure and go with the newest, latest technology.
And this is Elon Musk.
Elon Musk is definitely the latest technology.
He basically came in and he wants. In fact, this is really, if you could think about an area to really try something unique and new. Puerto
small
Rico
island.
Yeah, it's large enough. There's right now there's 3.4 million residents, so it's a big city here in Chicago. Big city here in the United States.
Right.
But we could also think of it as a place that Elon Musk talks about a battery system. The ability to build roofs with that take in the solar energy.
Right.
My goodness, you're on an island. Imagine all that. Now,
it's a perfect lab to try out some of the theories that Elon Musk has about solar energy.
Well, and Puerto Rico has so many challenges. Right? They're incredibly in debt. They've got all these problems going on.
Sure.
Why not use some of the future technology to subsidize it and basically get a testing laboratory? There's a number of things going on if you've ever lived near a beach. The elements on the salt air are incredibly harsh on electronics. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean? That means that even if they tried it and it failed because it was corrosive and stuff like that, we would know on how to build it. But if it did start working the way that
Elon Musk intends it to work.
well, guess what? They could start moving it up the coast. All of a sudden,
Absolutely.
areas that are that have not been developed yet, or areas that are looking to develop. This may give it the scale and the
Absolutely.
laboratory to allow it to work. This
Can you
seems like
imagine?
it's ripe to kind of play.
Can you imagine this? Remember when Chicago burned down, the Great Chicago Fire? Everything was destroyed. They started over. They put in a system of streets that were straight streets and a grid system. It changed Chicago, something that New York City has never been able to do. They've got very narrow, old-timey streets because they didn't have a moment of destruction. Puerto Rico might be the center of the development of some of this technology because of their terrible week that they've had.
This looks fascinating. All right, so Microsoft is giving up on their music service.
Yeah.
They're going to basically move you over to Spotify. This is not something that has not happened with Microsoft before. They've abandoned the Zune.
Yes.
But-
All the Zune owners who have been using Groove for the last 10 years are very sad about this.
So what it's basically
They're going
saying
to get together. They're going to get together in a small restaurant like yours, Chris, and they're going to cry into their coffee. The 3 Zune owners who have been using Groove.
and the guy from what is the book we read? Not Andrew Ware's the Spielberg movie that's coming out.
Well, I was
Ernest Cline.
I was thinking of the end of Guardians of the Galaxy 2, where he is handed a Zune.
He's handed a Zune, but wasn't that part Zune part of the?
I don't remember Ready Player One
maybe I'm
having
wrong.
a Zune. Maybe there was a Zune
Maybe I was wrong.
on the stack of things.
Anyway, this shows that you just can't buy your way into the industry. Innovation still happens.
Yes.
And Microsoft chose to, instead of purchasing Spotify, basically just transferring their accounts over.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going to happen with Microsoft. Microsoft is certainly still the giant in a lot of industries, but the music industry, they're getting out of.
All right, so we have a lot of news from Google, but let's give this news real quick because news publishers, and that means newspapers, whether the Chicago Tribune, the LA Times, the Washington Post, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, they've been devastated by basically search engines.
Yes.
Finding stuff, and magazines too. There's always, in fact, the last
publishing
month has
industry.
been longtime editors leaving magazines because they can't find a way to make them profitable. Google's finally said they will help out some.
Yeah.
And the way it worked in the past was, how did it work? You basically would search a topic in for news, and the agreement was if your paper came up, you could click through and you could read that.
Right.
Well, it seems like we're going to start having some walls, or Google's going to be working to get people to subscribe to newspapers.
Well, there's so many paywalls on so many newspapers right now. Right now, I don't subscribe to any newspapers. I don't get a newspaper on my front porch. I don't know how many Americans are still reading newspapers every day. You do.
I get a newspaper. You don't have to. When you subscribe, you're subscribing to digital content.
I don't subscribe to any of the digital content providers either.
And that's really what the real challenge is. And I
That's
can
it.
tell you, if you're trying to find information for Elgin, Illinois, which is a city,
Right.
Elgin certainly. The Elgin Courier certainly is a shell of what it was 10 years ago,
Absolutely.
and certainly a shell of what it was for 20 years ago. And when you get to smaller communities, even getting to that, we had a newspaper when we moved to our small community.
Right.
It no longer exists.
Nope.
In fact, our news comes through a Facebook feed.
And the Facebook feed works really well for our local communication. You have all sorts of fun things that you put on there.
But it's very noisy, and
is very
it's
noisy.
certainly not depth.
Correct.
So what I'm suggesting is we're going to have some news sources, and it looks like Google is going to be working with them to try to find a way to make it profitable enough to be able to keep them. That is a change of their policy.
Right.
This may or may not be helpful to people.
I don't know how this is going to play out. I don't know how many people are willing to pay money to get that information.
I think news also, very similar to like an Amazon Prime membership, you get the Washington Post for, what do you get, 6 months? You get it for 6 months.
because that's the one that's owned by Amazon, right?
Well, it's owned by Jeff Bezos,
Yeah.
and his goal was to take over the newspaper and bring the technology to the modern consumer.
Right.
Many of the other newspapers, I mean, WGN and Tribune and stuff like that are working on certain ways. But,
Right.
But We really are getting down to just a few newspapers. I mean, think about
And a few companies owning
the LA
those
Times,
newspapers.
Chicago Tribune are owned by the same company.
Right.
The Washington Post is trying a new way. We have the New York Times and we have the Wall Street Journal.
And
And think about that.
that might not be enough sources. That might be just one or two different major corporations giving us the news.
And when we have emergencies happen, like we had this week in Las Vegas,
Right.
imagine what those reporters can bring to the table. We've already seen that when you watch news, whether it's Fox or CNN, you're getting such a slanted view. It's really hard to kind of pick through what the reality of
Right.
the situation is. All of a sudden you get these loaded questions and you're like, oh, come on.
Right.
So anyway, a long time ago I started reading my news instead of watching it. I highly suggest that. But let's give us the good news that happened at Google today.
Google had their hardware event on Wednesday, and
Yes.
it was just what we expected. We had heard all the leaks of what Google was going to present to us, with a few exceptions. There were a few surprises built into the Google announcement. Google's focus this year is on AI. They are looking at their
What does
hardware.
AI stand for?
Artificial intelligence.
Oh.
Google, back to the book from 2 weeks ago, after on, Google might already be self-aware. If Google is already self-aware, the first thing she would do is hide from the rest of the people that work at Google. That's a really good book. It's called After On by Rob Reed. Those
That
of you
sounds
who
like
are
a great
interested in
movie.
That is, it will be a great movie. It's
All
a
right, so
great book.
Let's run down some of these things that they introduced.
Okay, so the hardware side of it is the interesting part for most people. The AI is the backbone of what they're doing. Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, came out and said, our phone is great. Our phone is wonderful. We have a great laptop. We have great hardware. But our hardware is not any better or different from anyone else's hardware. Our hardware is just as good as the premium hardware from every other company. What we have that they don't have is the artificial intelligence, the backbone.
It actually
of
can understand you, Steve?
supercomputing and super intelligence, and we have that for you. So they showed us the Pixel 2 smartphone.
All right, the Pixel 2 smartphone is a premium smartphone.
Mm-hmm.
You use the Pixel.
I love my Pixel. My
Your-
Pixel is my favorite phone I've ever owned.
Your wife uses the Samsung,
She has a Samsung, and she prefers that one.
and I have the iPhone. So all three of these are premium phones.
Correct.
So
The camera on the Pixel 2 has been rated as the best camera ever made on a phone. It gets a 98 rating on DxOMark.
now that's a little star right there, because I don't know if any professional photographers are going to spend time using the Pixel.
Okay.
But so it's on a phone.
When comparing it to professional cameras, absolutely, it is not the same as a professional camera.
Sure.
But the best camera is the one you have on your pocket.
Exactly. And these
the one that
and
you
these
have.
smartphones work real well, and Pixel 2
Pixel
has
2 is stunning.
All right,
the
there you
picture
go.
quality is stunning, and the way that they use the sensors to take out any motion of the video is absolutely magical.
All right, so it's $649 for the 64 meg.
Yep.
One seems like it's coming in right around the same price as the iPhone 8.
It's a little bit cheaper than the iPhone 8, but it's right around that same price.
So there you go.
It's offering just about the same experience, except for that AI piece. That's the Google part.
This is really interesting. The Pixel Book, which
Yes.
is that, did they rename the Chromebook?
This is their next Chromebook, $1,000 Chromebook. They had brought out one before called the Pixel,
Yeah.
and this is the new one, the Pixel Book. It is a 4-in-1 design, so you can fold it 4 different ways.
Work as a tablet.
It can work as a tablet. It is a touch screen. It has an Intel i5 processor or an i7. It's got 8 gigabytes of RAM, upgradable to 16, and it's got a solid-state drive.
So you can tell it's an Apple because it's upgradable. Thank goodness.
Well, when I say upgradable, I don't mean aftermarket.
Oh, really?
Because RAM is no longer a thing that you can change out. RAM is soldered into the board now.
All right, so I still don't understand why someone would pick $1,000 Chromebook
I don't.
over a say a MacBook, something like that.
There are a lot of comparison websites out there right now that are looking at exactly that question.
Sure.
And I don't have a valid answer for you.
But I think the Pixelbook's place is, if in education,
Yes.
it being this low-cost version.
Precisely.
And-
Our students are all walking around with $200 Chromebooks,
Sure.
which are more than sufficient for what they need. The computing power of this is overkill in so many ways.
All right, Steve, it's Chicago. I'm so sorry. What did I miss?
There's two more things that Google
Okay.
showed us. Google showed off their new wireless headphones.
Oh, I'm so sorry. This is
This-
the most important thing
I agree
that
with
they
you.
released this week. It could change the industry.
The movie Her featured a wireless earpiece that somebody would walk around with and could communicate with their digital assistant. Google has Pixel Buds that are headphones that communicate with the Google Assistant in your ear.
All right, so these are wireless headphones
Yes.
you wear,
Yes.
and you basically can just talk to it.
Just talk to your AI while you're walking down the street.
And unlike Siri, she may understand me.
Siri does not understand you, Chip. There's nothing you can do with your accent that Siri understands. Google understands you, Chip. She's listening very carefully to what you have to say.
Google cares, right?
Yeah.
But it truly is. This is really changing.
Because the biggest feature of these headphones is Google Translate is built into this assistant, and in your ear, you can hear the translation from 40 different languages almost instantly.
Maybe at that point I can understand foreign languages.
In the future, we might not need to study foreign languages. The computer in Star Trek was a universal translator. It understood every language, and it translated it to a language that you understood instantly.
And your mastery of Klingon will finally become useful.
That's right. Google is right on the edge of being there, right? Google is right there. This translate feature is going to be revolutionary. You can imagine doing business with people who don't speak the same language as you, and literally the AI of Google translates it. It's still not perfect. My French teacher wife will still tell me Google Translate is not the best translator out there.
It's
need
muy
a
bueno.
human.
Muy bueno.
But the graph of how good a translation, it's almost to human quality at this point. They are getting there. And give it 10 years, give it 20 years, and my students will be getting jobs anywhere in the world,
And
maybe without
those people
leaving
from
their
anywhere in
home.
the world will be getting jobs here too. So it's good news.
It's great news.
The world's going to become a lot smaller.
Say it again? It is not a Babel fish. It is not a Babel fish. I'm sure that you could draw a fish on it, but it is the Babel fish from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. The idea of this device is translating for you. The other thing that they showed us is this new camera system. Google has rolled out this new camera system, and it's called Google Clips. The idea of Google Clips is the AI will take your pictures for you.
There
That's
you go.
not scary at all. You can just set up your camera and go about your day. It'll take the pictures for you. It's supposed to, according to Google, automatically capture 7-second moving photos of things it finds interesting.
What could possibly go wrong?
If your camera is finding things interesting, it will take a picture of that. If
What could
people are
possibly go
smiling,
wrong?
if the
Nothing
dog is
incriminating.
chasing its tail, nothing
No.
incriminating, nothing about Wonder Woman in
Oh
this
my goodness.
at all.
Well, that's
This-
just crazy.
I think that you're right. I think that the intrusion of a camera that knows to take pictures is frightening.
I've got this 7-second photo of you right here.
And they say that it's not instantly uploaded to the cloud.
That's right, because Google would never do that, would
They
they?
say that they're not going to do that, but
You can
boy,
delete it. Of course you can.
Instant cameras everywhere are frightening. Those of you who have read 1984, 1984 is here. It was off by about 30 years. But the thing that was really wrong about 1984 is we are buying the cameras ourselves as opposed to the government putting the cameras on us.
Imagine that.
Security cameras and Those of you who have looked into what London has done with security cameras, they have cameras everywhere, and the rest of the world
Big
is
Brother's
just
always
catching up.
watching, and Big Brother loves you.
Big
All
Brother
right.
is the queen, but that's okay.
All right, Steve, we're here in Chicago. There's
Yes.
exciting things going on.
It is
What's going on?
The Chicago International Film Festival, the 53rd annual Chicago International Film Festival is happening. The film festival will open with Marshall, the film that we already talked about Thurgood Marshall.
Starring Black Panther.
That's starring Black Panther. And Sir Patrick Stewart himself is going to be there this year. He's being honored on October 25th for all of his amazing work in film.
All right, so this is a longest running competitive film festival in North America.
Wow.
So 53 years we've had this. We're going to, on the 25th when it closes, at that point they're going to have Patrick Stewart. You can go and you can sit in an audience and you could say, make it so.
Make it so. All of his other things that he's famous for saying, which I can't think of any. There's Cerebro. That's about it. That's all I can
Earl
think of.
Grey.
Earl Grey. Hot. Film festivals are great. There's so many talented people. We're here at a podcast festival, marathon, but let's call it a festival because it sounds more fun. Because I told people I was doing a marathon, and they're like, "Oh, you're going to get up early and do a marathon?" I said, "Yes."
26.2 minutes, Steve.
And they said, "Oh, have you been training?" I said, "Yes, I've been podcasting for years." And they go, "Wait, what? A marathon, right?" I said, "Yes, a podcast marathon." That's what Southgate Media Group does for us.
All right, so we want to make sure we thank Southgate Media Group for putting together this festival.
Yeah.
We should also thank the Blue Box Cafe here in Elgin, Illinois.
Absolutely.
Now you can follow them. You can look at our notes. We've got we'll have little places you can click to make sure you can follow them.
Follow them on Facebook. Just come down and share some time down here. Follow them on Twitter, Instagram. They're all over. We're all over the place. You can find all sorts of information.
And Southgate Media Group has a wide variety of different podcasts. So if you enjoy our podcast, I'm sure you can find some kind of subject that you can get a deep.
Rob Southgate has made a wonderful media empire. He's the king of Southgate Media Group, and boy, the Surfs are just killing it. They are.
He's
making
always
some
dressed
great
as
shows.
that Monopoly guy.
He's the Monopoly guy showing up at the Equifax. It's funny stuff. Yes,
That's what he dressed like all the time. In fact, the monocle. The monocle and the laugh. It's,
Uncle Scrooge. Uncle Scrooge, can we come do the marathon again next year? This has been so much fun. You have to do a David Tennant as a duck. Yes, that's right. We've had so much fun. Come on down to the Blue Box Cafe, Elgin, Illinois. Enjoy the coffee. The coffee is fantastic, by the way. It's great sandwiches, fantastic salads, and we're so happy to be a part of the marathon for another year.
Oh, we are.
I think we have enough information to survive another week, maybe another year until we get back for the 4th annual Southgate Media Group podcast marathon.
Only if we can come back next week, Steve. And can we come back next year, too?
Yeah, let's come back next week. Let's do this every Saturday morning. We'll roll in at 7 o'clock in the morning. We'll get some coffee. Chris will love it. We'll just get some people in, and we'll have so much fun. So I want to thank you again for listening to Too Much Scrolling. I'm Steve Fodor.
I'm Chip Hessenflow.
We'll see you in the future.
Let's hear it one more time for Too Much Scrolling. Great job, guys. Thank you, Chip. Thank you, Steven.